Good afternoon, everyone. With that recording notification, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jared Hubbard. I am the project manager for Downtown Rapid Transit, representing the City of Rochester out of the Office of Administration. We have been with you, I and other project team has been with you for quite some time now, on the last few months, doing these webinars and talking through Downtown Rapid Transit. Just real briefly again, Rapid Transit is a 2.6 mile bus rapid transit or BRT line that's proposed along 2nd Street in downtown Rochester, extending from the West Mayo Lot, what is currently the Mayo Lot, all the way to the Government Center and the Civic Center that you can see kind of a picture behind me of. The project is anticipated to open up in the spring of 2025, and so we are still very much in the kind of the earlier stage of progress and design. And so that's what we've been talking about these last few months, is some of these early levels of the design. We've looked at traffic, and we've talked about kind of other project elements. And we'll talk in the future about what the stations or the platforms will start to look like. That'll be next month. And then the following month, we'll even look at the environmental review that's part of the federal process with receiving federal funds for this project. But today we're going to do something kind of different and unique that we haven't really done in these monthly webinars previously. Previously, like I said, we've been focusing mainly on the project. But as more people find out about Downtown Rapid Transit, we're learning as a design team, as a city as well, that there's individuals wondering where did the project come from? How will the project connect into our current RPT system, or Rochester Public Transit System, and where is Rochester Public Transit going into the future? And so those are kind of the questions and purpose for today's webinar session. So today we have 3 individuals representing 3 different sides of those questions. We'll start with Brian Law from the Rochester Olmsted County of Governments, or the MPO for the Rochester area, and he'll take a look at kind of where we've come from a little bit, and start to look a little bit into the future and show where the Downtown Rapid Transit project has shown up in all the studies and past work that's been done over the last decade. Then we'll move on to Ryan Yetzer, a planner with the City of Rochester, who was integral in the part of the recent comprehensive plan, the city's most recent comprehensive plan. And so Ryan will take a look at where transit falls in that plan and how transit associates with land use. And then we'll close the session with Bradley Bobbitt from Rochester Public Transit, and he'll take a look at our current system, and it will even get you some current numbers on how the pandemic is affecting our transit system, and then where we are moving in the future for rapid transit. With that being said, I'll stop talking and I'll hand it off to Brian Law of ROCOG. Brian?
Thanks, Jared. As Jared said, my name is Brian Law. I'm with the Rochester Olmsted Council of Governments, the Metropolitan Planning Organization in the Rochester Olmsted area. One of the things that MPOs are responsible for is putting together long-range transportation plans that look out at least 25 years into the future for how federal dollars will be spent for transportation in their MPO planning area. So ROCOG adopted its last update of the LRTP back in the fall of 2020. And so I've been asked to talk about how the Downtown Rapid Transit project fits into the overall transportation scheme. So part of this long-range transportation plan is to bring into it all the other transportation plans that have been going on in the area, including the City of Rochester's comprehensive plan and other plans done by Rochester Public Transit, Olmsted County, and other organizations. So we have, moving on to the ROCOG plan, first thing to talk about is that so many of these plans that have come up in the last decade or so have talked about the need for building density in downtown, and getting people to shift their travel mode, where right now the dominant way that people come downtown is through single occupant vehicles. As you can see there on the left picture of that on the screen, you see 40 people standing next to a car. So that's 40 single occupant vehicles, and you can see the amount of space that takes up. So that those cars need to be parked. Those cars need to travel on the roads, and the challenge that really brings is what to do with cars as they're trying to access downtown, and how to store them when they're idle during the day. So better options come with shifting their people's mode onto other modes, such as transit, which you see in the middle there. The same 40 people can be on one bus, each person pretty much with a seat, or 40 people on bicycles or foot. You can see in the right picture. So that started really with the downtown master plan in 2010. This plan recognized the need to reduce single occupant vehicle travel to downtown to less than half of all commuters. Then in 2015, the DMC plan was adopted, and it continued that idea of the mode shift and really emphasized the idea that we need to bring people and not cars into downtown. And that does include having people live downtown, not just working there. But with the DMC plan, we recognized that it was not just important to get the people out of single occupant vehicles, but it was important to get them into transit as well. And so the goal was set to get by 2035, 20 years after the adoption of the plan, to get 23 to 30% of all commuters downtown using transit. That's compared to 10% that were using transit in 2015. So the best way to accomplish that was to increase people's transit options with high frequency, high capacity transit. So this was this was identified in the plan as a downtown circulator, and that has evolved into the downtown rapid transit that we're talking about today. And there were three basic markets to serve with this. It was moving peak hour commuters into and out of downtown using park and rides, large parking reservoirs at either end of the route. It was also to move patients and visitors from lodging facilities to Mayo facilities. And it was also to move people within downtown during the off-peak periods. So lunch during the workday, after work, and even weekends. So continuing with that stated goal of mode shift, the Transit Development Plan was put together by Rochester Public Transit and adopted in 2017. And it took into account the need for this greater density in the city, especially density of employment and even residents downtown. And so the TDP was really planned with an expanded and even more robust transit system in mind. And then the year later, the city adopted its comprehensive plan, Planning to Succeed. It really emphasized the need for density and infill development throughout the city, not just downtown, and the establishment of a primary transit network, which would be a bus rapid transit network that would connect the entire city, not just to points downtown, but throughout the city. And then there was the integrated transit studies, which brought together considerations of transit, the city loop, which was an active transportation or bicycle pedestrian loop around the downtown area, travel demand management, which helps to encourage people to make transportation choices other than a single occupant vehicle, and the parking challenges that will still be, or the parking solutions that will still be needed, even as we de-emphasize single occupant vehicles. We recognize that even with the mode shift, there will be 40-some% of trips downtown made by car. So that brings us to ROCOG's long-range transportation plan, which was adopted in September of 2020. And it has goals for three different modes, not just transit, but also active transportation and streets and highways. But here's a sampling of some of the goals identified in the LRTP. And you can see the downtown rapid transit is mentioned as a specific example of how some of the transportation goals of ROCOG will be accomplished. One of the things that is driving this, of course, is the growth of Rochester that's expected in the next few decades, not just in terms of employment, but also in terms of just the population. So here's a graph that comes out of the long-range plan that goes back to 1990, and it shows a pretty steady growth in the population of Rochester, the population of Olmsted County, and of employment in the area. And you can see that it's a fairly steady growth that's anticipated from starting in 1990 all the way through the middle of the 21st century. So the DMC plan and downtown rapid transit as part of that is a response to this growth that is anticipated over the coming decades. Here you can see a map showing where people commuting from outside of Olmsted County are coming from. It's obviously most of them are coming from the counties immediately surrounding Olmsted County, but they are coming from farther away as well. And so it just shows that there's a huge employment pull here to Rochester from all of Southeast Minnesota and even into the neighboring states. This is a picture I know has been shown a lot at these webinars. This is the illustration of the mode shift and what's necessary. At the top, you have what was the existing mode share in 2015 at the adoption of the DMC plan. And you can see that 10% of trips downtown are made by transit. And they're in the two bottom pictures we have on the left, the kind of minimum that we need to achieve for downtown to continue operating and not be clogged up entirely with vehicles. But on the right, you see a little bit more of an ambitious one where you can reduce single occupant car trips downtown to 43% of all trips and increase transit to almost a third of all trips downtown. Also increases in carpooling and in walking and bicycling. So the downtown rapid transit is a part of a much larger and really comprehensive transportation strategy to bring people into and out of downtown. It also involves the existing Rochester Public Transit Service, which you can see in one map of that on the left, showing the fixed route service pre-pandemic. And this picture is actually from the city's comprehensive plan, so it shows associated land uses in the growth areas around. I'm sorry, it shows the potential growth areas around the city. But then on the right, you see the ZIP's dial ride paratransit service area as well. Those are part of the strategy for downtown in the coming decades. This system will continue to be an important part of getting people into and out of downtown. Downtown rapid transit, this is the map showing the proposed alignment right now. And it does show the phase 2 considerations that will have to be made in the coming years, where it after it reaches the Zumbro River Government Center area, it will have to we'll have to figure out in years to come how it's going to access another parking reservoir at the other end of the alignment, and that would there's some decisions to be made about that, but that would be in a phase 2. As Jarrett mentioned earlier, this is bus rapid transit. It's envisioned as BRT. There are some pictures here that show what BRT is. I think that if people have been watching these webinars for a while, they kind of have a good understanding of what that is. But briefly, it's higher capacity vehicles that come frequently, typically with their own lane or at least prioritization throughout traffic. The bus stops at stations rather than mere stops. You have a real kind of you have a pretty bulky permanent sense of a station instead of just a bus stop sign, for example. So what you really have is something approximating the streetcar or light rail experience, but with the flexibility and reduced cost of rubber tire buses, which can bring in a system like this at maybe, I think a rule of thumb is about 1/10 the cost of a light rail system for a mode that really does move people quite similarly. Right now, Rochester Public Transit operates a park and ride network. That was park and rides were identified in the DMC plan as a big part of the strategy going forward. So those will be expanded. They will be made more ambitious, bigger facilities owned and operated by the city, and scattered throughout the city so that they are in the best possible placement for capturing commute shed that we know we've been able to measure where that's coming from. And so that we'll have plenty of opportunities for people to park their car outside of downtown and then take a bus into downtown, or bus rapid transit into downtown. So you see here on the left some approximate areas as to where these large park and rides could be. And then on the right, you see another map that came out of the comprehensive plan originally, where the primary transit network is shown in these lines connecting different nodes of the city, which are basically, briefly, are just concentrations of residential, business, retail, commercial, and transportation activities. And they would be connected then by BRT routes. So all of this is going to, of course, necessitate a big investment in equipment and other capital expenditures, but also in operating costs. And so you can see here the projected increase in costs that would come from continuing to operate RPT's fixed route service, continuing its ZIP's dial-ride paratransit, continuing and expanding its park and ride service to be more, to have a bigger capacity and kind of a more ambitious system than it currently is. Instituting downtown rapid transit on 2nd Street, which is this project, and then finally establishing and expanding the primary transit network, which would be a different or separate bus rapid transit network. So this is a chart showing the operating needs for that over time. And there's similar charts in the long-range plan that show the capital requirements, both in terms of vehicles that will need to be acquired and also stations and other kinds of infrastructure. So a lot of this depends on travel demand management as well. We can, you have to have the options out there for transit to get people out of their cars and get them to make the choice to come downtown in a mode other than a single occupant vehicle. Travel demand management, such as Arrive Rochester, an organization that has been started here in the city a couple of years ago, it's an organization that helps to provide incentives for people to make that choice. And there are lots of different ways that can happen, but it's usually it's a partnership with area businesses who can then provide incentives to their employees to choose transit, for example, or bicycling or walking instead of driving and parking their car downtown. And there are future technologies that will be a big consideration in this as well. So, not least is connected and automated vehicles, what role they are going to play in transit going forward. And then there's also mobility as a service, which is the combination of not just people accessing transit itself, but accessing fare payment and scheduling and all that kind of thing using a mobile device or computer, and even being able to link or chain their trips using public transit and private transit transportation as well. So it really is the long-range transportation plan really does look at comprehensively what where we've been with transit and transportation in the Rochester and Olmsted County, and then looking then forward for the next 20 to 25 years as to what those years could bring. And this is really an era of pretty major change, especially here in Rochester. So with that, I think I'll stop. And I think there's an opportunity for some questions while I turn the screen over.
Yeah, Jared Hubbard here again. Thank you, Ryan, Brian, for going through that and giving us kind of the high level of what transit in Rochester has looked like and is going to look like here. I should have said, and my apologies, that we are taking questions in a couple of different ways. First, you can always ask your questions by using the raise your hand feature. And during these breaks, we will go through a process where we unmute your mic and let you ask your questions live. Additionally, another way to ask questions is the Q&A box, and you can go ahead and submit questions via that platform at any time, and we'll try to take these breaks and at the end to try to answer as many of those as we can. While it take a minute here and before Ryan gets going to present and take a second to try to answer a few of these questions that have come on in. Primarily, there's been a few questions coming on in talking about bicycling and using that as a real commuter mode for folks as part of the future future downtown Rochester. And so there was one of the comments was concerns about lockers. We are looking at additional ways to provide climate control and to bikes and additional locker systems as part of the project. Most stations and platforms will feature kind of more standard bike racks, but in a few selected locations, we might look at going above and beyond and going to the locker situation, but mainly at St. Mary's is one of those two locations. A question about individuals who do commute by bike and showering. The city of Rochester is looking into that as a project as well, as trying to offer showering facilities for individuals in the future. But that more to come on that project. And then I think that there was a question on shoot, I'm trying to remember what the third one was. Accommodating bikes, being more friendly with bikes in the community and bringing them into buildings, and that's a higher policy conversation that we'll have to start to have as a community. To make sure we don't have. I did see one person did raise their hand, and so Paula, if you can. Dan, if you can go ahead and recognize Paula, move to Paula to a panelist so that she can ask her questions. And once Dan does that, Paula, you should be able to unmute your mic. It looks like you're now available.
Okay, I did kind of in the question and answer box, I talked about this a little bit, but it's really crucial. You just casually mentioned that you had done a commutership. Assessed where people are coming from. And I was trying to get at that same data set to help for the Housing Alliance planning for home development on a, really high level strategic thing. And so that data would be invaluable to bring to the Housing Alliance people that shows that the commuter and assessment and quantities of people. Is that available online, or can you send it to me, or I put my email in?
Yep. We got you.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Paula. We did get your email, and Brian and Rocog have a lot of that information. And so I will help assist Brian in making sure that he connect you two and get the information that you're requesting.
Okay.
To help make sure.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate it. Thank you, Paula. To help make sure that we have plenty of time for our other two speakers, we're going to go ahead and continue forward. Ryan, can you give us a look at a comprehensive plan?
Thanks, Jarrett. My name is Ryan Yetzer. I'm with the Rochester Community Development Department. I have been asked to come here today and talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan and the coordination between land use and transportation. I do want to note, I see a couple of the key authors of this section on the call here, so hopefully I live up to their expectation on this section here. This first slide, Rochester adopted its comprehensive plan in 2018, as Brian touched on. P2S 2040 establishes 7 core principles for the city of Rochester, which are listed below. The first of those core principles is the importance of integrating land use and transportation. Next slide. To build on the 7 core principles, P2S 2040 establishes 21 goals and 91 policies which help to define how the city can achieve the goals of the plan. While there are many goals and policies related to the integration of land use and transportation, I wanted to call out Goal 6, developing a node and corridor-based TOD opportunities, and Goal 8, accommodating a greater share of urban growth using infill techniques. These two goals were used as key drivers behind the city creating its first transit-oriented development zoning district, which further, these goals strongly support the development of the rapid transit project. Next slide. The next few slides dive into what the comp plan says about integrating land use and transportation. To set the stage a little bit, land use and development patterns are fundamentally interrelated aspects of how the city grows and functions, and they are critical to both quality of life and fiscal sustainability. Next slide. P2S 2040 presents a lot of concepts to think about around land use and transportation. I've listed a few key ones below. Strategic land use policies can be used to guide development into strategic areas, encourage infill and redevelopment, promote balanced growth, and expand mixed use and density zoning concepts. As for transportation, the city should continue to incorporate complete street principles into all projects, commit to strategic set of corridors that connect major destinations to downtown through permanent transit services, such as the Rapid Transit Project, and use land use to increase density that will support increased transit service. By doing all of these, the city can start to manage travel demand as was talked about in Brian's presentation, and promote mode shift. Next slide. To further the ideas around integration of land use and transportation, P2S 2040 presents goals that the city should consider around the use of transit investment as a means to shape the city's growth and increase transit use. The key to these goals is the creation of the primary transit network, which I will touch on in a little bit. And I will, again, these goals are further supported by the Rapid Transit Project and will go a long way towards the city achieving some of these goals. Next slide. In these next few slides, I will cover some key maps from P2S 2040. The first of which is the development vision. This map places an importance on encouraging mixed-use development, supporting compact development, and expanding housing choice by furthering this development vision. We can begin to achieve our transit goals based on the development vision presented in this map. Again, this emphasizes the importance on the link between land use and transportation. Next slide. This map displays the primary transit network, or PTN. This map really set the stage for the transit-oriented development zoning in place today. The areas shown in red were rezoned to TOD in 2019. Our hope is that the TOD zoning will help to increase density in these corridors over time and will allow the city to implement high quality transit service in these areas. The Rapid Transit Project certainly helps support the TOD concept. And again, this was also touched on in Brian's slides as well, but this is one of the areas where we are certainly coordinated around a long-term vision on this concept. Next slide. The last map I wanted to quickly show is the stability and change map. P2S 2040 suggests that single family and low density residential areas are unlikely to change over time. On the flip side, underutilized commercial areas, declining shopping centers, empty office buildings, and downtown parking lots are likely to receive redevelopment pressures. By having appropriate land use designations on these lands, the redevelopment of these properties can have a positive impact on the city's long-term transit goals. And again, this map was one of the key maps behind the creation of the transit-oriented development zoning district, which you can see in the blue areas along North and South Broadway, 4th Street and 2nd Street. And then further, the orange areas surrounding the downtown was used as the basis for our infill and redevelopment zoning district, also known as R2X, to help increase the density around those areas. And again, furthering the idea of the importance in the link between land use and transportation. I believe that's my last slide, so I will go on to question and answer. Jarrett?
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. I'll take a second here and see if we have any more questions that come on in for Ryan, and how will transit and transportation connects on in with land use. One of the key pieces that I think you've heard so far stated by both of our presenters is the PTN network, or the primary transit network. The goal for that network is to develop a bus rapid transit similar type service along those routes. And so those routes are kind of the high location for expansion of a similar system in the future for the city. We do have one hand raised. Paula, Dan, if you can go ahead and unmute. All right, Paula, please go ahead and ask your question.
I have a really basic question. I don't understand the land use connection. Like, I was looking at the northeast section, especially given the recent city council approval of the larger multifamily dwelling. And I see there was, on that map, there was a little square of orange over in the northeast area. So zoning, I don't understand. Yeah, see over, yeah, there's just a little bit of orange over there. So what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that the buses are going to be trying to go to orange areas? Or what's that relationship between designated infill and the rapid transit or any transit?
I could answer this question, but I know Ryan could do a much better job. Ryan, please go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Paula. I'm just trying to pull up that map myself so I can see that the orange areas that you're seeing downtown and the orange area that you're referring to are not the same designation.
Oh,
They're different designations. So the infill and redevelopment areas were intended to be near downtown. The orangish areas that you're referring to, my map is just about to open up and I can tell you exactly what that designation means.
oh yeah, I see that. I see that as red and orange.
Yeah, it's hard to tell when the map is so small, but they are slightly different. As for okay, that area is labeled as infill or current development, which means it was vacant land likely at the time that this plan was completed, and so it's infill, but a different kind of infill likely than what we would see in the downtown area. Now, that being said, I'm glad you brought up the project that recently went through City Council, because the integration of land use and transportation is certainly a key talking point for that project. And transit was brought up a lot during the discussions, and frankly, the lack thereof transit in that area. Exactly. And the integration of land use and transportation would only further the transit goals. And so it's kind of a chicken or an egg. You're not going to increase services until there are folks there to ride the bus. But it's tough to make folks live there when they don't have access to the bus. And so I personally believe that approving that project furthers the link between land use and transportation. Higher density land use, more people in the area, and hopefully increased transit service can follow that.
How fast can that happen?
It's really a question of over time, how much the area can increase in density over time. I'm not an expert in what that trigger is for the transit side. All I can say is that an increased land use, a higher intense land use certainly helps that narrative.
And that I think is a good lead on into Bradley Bobbitt's presentation. Bradley's with Rochester Public Transit, and he will be taking a look at kind of the state and existing system, and then we'll start to look at what the future holds and trying to answer that question piece of when and how we change the network. Bradley, please go ahead.
Thanks, Jared. Yeah, hi, my name is Bradley Bobbitt, and I'm a transit operations specialist with Rochester Public Transit. What that means is I work on project management, but also day-to-day operations, and then the planning piece. To get at Paula's question a little bit of how quickly that can happen, we will be talking about the transit development plan update here, where we'll be taking a little bit of a further look out at our service needs, both in kind of the near term and midterm. And then, we've been changing our service a lot just in light of COVID. We do have a route that goes out there during the weekdays, the 116. But yeah, as far as increased frequency or another route, that's something that we'll be looking at through the transit development plan. But anyhow, so I'm going to be giving first an overview of Rochester Public Transit generally, and then diving into that transit development plan to hopefully give a little bit more light on what we'll be looking at with that plan update and how those plans will be implemented. So just for kind of an overview, Rochester Public Transit provides two types of services: our fixed route, which is what most people think of when they think of transit, buses. Rochester just has a bus system. And then we're working on the rapid transit system. And then we also have our ZIPS paratransit service, which Brian talked about a little bit earlier. We have goals for each of those types of services. If we could go to the next slide, please. For fixed route, the goals that were set in the last TDP, last transit development planning process, is to be competitive with private automobiles, which has a lot to do, that goal has a lot to do with having more frequent service, faster service, like BRT, where you don't have buses mixed in with other traffic, generally increase our ridership share. You'll notice that a lot of our goals really align with either the regional plans or the city's comprehensive plan, and that is because this is our plan, the TDP, is really an implementation plan that's underneath those other plans. If we could go to the next slide, please. So this is just a bit of an overview of our current fixed route service. Overall, we have 71 buses, 600 plus stops around town, 70 bus shelters, including those ones downtown, but even the smaller kind of mostly glass shelters or some of the older ones that you see around town. Before COVID hit, we had about 35 weekday routes. The map you see on the left there is what we're currently running. It's a little bit reduced from those 35 routes. Right now we're running 24. However, that is up from when things initially closed down. We were only running what we called our core service, which was our weekend and evening routes. So we're still running those weekend and evening routes. There's 6 of them. There used to be 10. It's a little deceiving though, because 4 of the routes were evening routes and 6 of them were weekend routes. And now we run those 6 routes, weekends, evenings. So during certain periods, there's actually expanded coverage. To give you kind of an overall idea of how much service we're actually providing, a service hour is how long a bus is running where service is being provided. So before COVID, we were running about 110,000 hours of service. When you add up all the different buses running at the same time, it all adds up. Right now we're at about 85,000. And then we do have a system of park and rides. All of our park and rides right now are leased or are operated through agreements. So some of them we've actually closed down during COVID due to reduced ridership, but we still have 4 in operation and we're currently planning a 5th. Next slide, please. So these are goals for our ZIPS paratransit service. This is for folks who are unable to use the fixed route transit service for multiple reasons. And we're looking to provide a comprehensive door-to-door paratransit service. We have goals of monitoring the performance of our service, just like with fixed route, and to maximize our efficiency and effective use of resources. Next slide, please. ZIPS paratransit is a little more simple to explain. We have about 9 paratransit buses, and as Brian showed earlier, this is our service area. We just drew a big square around the city. It's about 142 square mile service area that will pick up folks and bring them to destinations as requested. Next slide, please. So this is ridership on our fixed route service. As you can see, over the last few years before COVID hit, we were having some pretty serious growth. Our Rochester was also expanding its transit service at that time, implementing the last transit development plan. And then as COVID hit and things shut down, that has had large impacts to our ridership. And we're currently in the process of getting some of that back. Next slide, please. This shows a little bit more detail. As you can see on the very left-hand side, that's about March in 2020. And after the governor's orders came to shut things down, we had a very steep drop off, and then we've been slowly coming back. We've been continually monitoring our ridership every week. And this is part of helping us make determinations about when to bring back service. We also work with Olmsted County Health on different requirements. Right now, we have all of our buses running at 50% of seating capacity. So I just wanted to share this to show you we are closely monitoring the situation. Ridership is returning, and part of the next transit development plan update will be planning for both resiliency in the face of similar situations, hopefully not, but any sort of situation in the future, as well as planning for coming back from COVID and what that will look like, both in terms of total ridership, how quickly people will come back, what that level might be. Anyhow, next slide, please. And then here's our ridership for zips. You can see a little bit different situation in the fixed route. We had slightly declining ridership in the years leading up to 2020. And then again, due to COVID, we experienced a pretty sharp dip in the use of that service. Next slide, please. So I'll go on to the transit development plan here, which has already been talked about a little bit. Next slide. Thank you. So just a general overview of what it is. As I mentioned, really it's a 5-year to 10-year implementation plan for Rochester Public Transit. We're implementing the policies and strategies from the city's comprehensive plan, so that Planning to Succeed 2040. In particular, this time we're going to be looking at the primary transit network, which is a major strategy within Planning to Succeed. We'll also be looking at general changes in demand. This is something we do every time, but looking at population growth, changes in travel patterns, like Brian was talking about, both in terms of kind of estimates of behavior and then what we can do to try to help achieve that mode shift. That's a larger goal. And then this is also an opportunity we take to engage with members of the community in getting their feedback and ideas for managing the community's transit system. Next slide, please. I just wanted to share this slide to kind of show you what the breadth of the topics covered in the transit development plan. There's really a lot in there, a lot of work that goes into it. So we're assessing, what is the current population and population distribution and jobs and job distribution within the city. What's our geographic layout? How's our current service performing? Are there any gaps between where population growth and job growth has happened and our current system, things like that? We've done public engagement, whether that's surveys, open houses. That will probably look very different this time around due to COVID precautions. We look at how we're performing compared to peers, similarly sized cities with similar employment bases. That's actually somewhat difficult to find for Rochester. And we look at implementation plans for achieving those goals and changing our service as is determined throughout that planning process. What sort of capital assets we'll need to get in order to do that. The big one, which will be for our next TDP update, will be the organizational and staffing plan, particularly with bus rapid transit coming. We'll have very different staffing needs probably before it's implemented, and then once we have our rapid transit up and running. The financial plan looks at costs, expected income, grants, things like that. And then Title VI, which is Civil Rights Act. We always need to do analyses to ensure that we're not having disproportionate burdens or impacts or benefits on any particular group based on who is protected under the Civil Rights Act. Next slide, please. So these are just a few highlights of what was actually in the last TDP in terms of recommendations or projects. As Brian mentioned, it advocated for higher frequency corridors and expanded hours of service. We also simplified our routes. Recently, we renumbered our bus routes. Previously, you'd have one route, say like the 4 that you've had the 4A, the 4B, the 4M for midday, and the 4N. And this new planned service would have simpler numbers so that one route would have one number and be a bit easier to understand. As Brian mentioned and Ryan mentioned, the park and ride plan, which is part of that primary transit network plan. The previous TDP supported additional staff at Rochester Public Transit, which is why I'm here presenting to you. And then we also looked at expansion of our fleet, expansion of the park and rides, but also potentially transit centers and then bus stop enhancements. Those are just a few things that were in the previous TDP. Next slide, please. Obviously, being in 2021, a lot has happened since then. We've added capacity at our garage in preparation for expanding our fleet, which we've been slowly doing to get ready for that service expansion, which was put on hold because of COVID, but we've been kind of piecemeal implementing it as we can. As I mentioned, we've added new staff. We are ordering, actually it was just approved, our purchase agreement with New Flyer to get our first electric buses and charging infrastructure, which is pretty exciting. These will be 60-foot electric buses that'll be used on our commuter routes, which are similar to the buses that are expected to be used or we're looking at for the rapid transit project. We're currently working on final design for city-owned park and ride, which will be 75th Street Northwest on the north side of town. As I mentioned, we did our service renumbering. There's been a number of DMC developments which impact our ability to provide service in different areas. Work on the Rochester Rapid Transit project, and then COVID-19. Next slide. So as far as this update, just so you know where we're at with it right now, we have a request for proposals out, meaning we're looking for consultants to send a proposal in of how they would achieve our goals for the project. That was posted on March 23rd. We're hoping to have a consultant selected and approved by the City Council in June. And the plan update is expected to take a year or a little bit longer, kind of depending. We'll see what proposals we get, but that's what we expect. Next slide. As far as what we want to do and what we've outlined in that request for proposals for consultants to come back to us with, we're looking to build off the work of the previous TDP as well as the city's comprehensive plan. We put a lot of emphasis on community engagement. Again, that's going to be a challenge this time around, but rapid transit has been a great example of how the city can do that, as well as the Southeast Downtown Waterfront Small Area Plan, particularly under these restrictions with COVID. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. And yeah, we're very much looking to integrate a stress integration of how we implement transit service with those overarching strategies and goals from the city comprehensive plan. So that primary transit network, in particular with our transit development plan. And then we have some special topics, obviously COVID-19, but also we're looking to have a longer range vision of how we electrify the fleet over time. Planning for staffing, facility needs, et cetera, as Rochester Rapid Transit is implemented. We're also looking at taking a comprehensive look at all of our bus stops around town. We have some legacy stops that I'm sure folks are aware of that need to be brought up to a certain level of service standard. And so we're looking at creating a comprehensive inventory of what improvements may be needed to achieve that standard, and then an implementation plan for that. And then finally, looking at RPT's fare structure that hasn't been looked at in quite a while. And so we're, along with our financial review, just generally of expected revenues, et cetera, we're going to be looking at our fare structure. And I'm going to skip that one, but that second to last one. But in general, we really want to prepare a plan that folks can easily use, read, understand, that's a little less maybe technical and wonky, so that we can have a good dialogue with our community. Next slide. And that is all I have for my presentation. I think it's time for questions.
Thank you, Bradley. I really appreciate you and the depth you went on in describing all of Rochester Public Transit Service. We did have a couple of questions come on in. One that did come on in was about public involvement in the TDP. What are some of the plans for that, and how might someone reach out for that?
Sure. So in general, aside from the TDP, we do have our Community Advisory on Transit committee that we meet with on a regular basis, and we actually have 2 positions that have just opened on that board. So if you are interested in, beyond the plan update, just generally being involved in discussions on transit, that's something that I'd encourage you to look into. We have asked consultants to, as part of their proposals, include a co-design or advisory group type approach to public engagement. So there should be an opportunity for more involved engagement on this project. We'll have to see, as far as the details go, what we get back on proposals from consultants, but we have asked for that. And then we're also planning on surveys, surveys of riders, public events if we can. We'll see where we're at with COVID. But there should be plenty of opportunity. And if you are interested in either the Community Advisory on Transit or, there'll probably be announcements if we have a co-design type approach for the TDP update. I'd encourage you to keep an eye out for that. And if you're interested, reach out regarding the Community Advisory on Transit board.
Thank you, Bradley. I'll kind of answer this question, but if Bradley, if you want to add anything to my answer, I'd love that. But the question came on in of what's the planned interaction with rapid transit and the kind of RPT's current bus stops along 2nd Street. And I would simply answer this way, that we are planning on the 2 systems working together. There will still be local service provided within the 2nd Street corridor, primarily at St. Mary's and around the 2nd and 1st Avenue locations. But Bradley, anything you would add to that question, to that answer?
No, yeah, the local service, the commuter service will still be there. The plan is for them to also be using the back lanes, which will be a benefit for our operations. But in general, it'll still be there.
A question came on in about incentivizing riders and service levels. Nick, you said you would, can you take a shot at answering this question? Nick from Rochester Public Transit as well.
Good afternoon, Nick Lemmer. I'm the communications coordinator at Rochester Public Transit, and that's a great question, Ben. We always see the best way to incentivize riders is to make our service as convenient and reliable as possible, so it competes with the private automobile, as Brian and Bradley have both indicated earlier. Along with that, Brian alluded to some TDM or transit demand management programs that we have in place, like arriverochester.com. I encourage you to check that out. These are incentive programs designed to encourage people to not only ride the bus a little bit more, but also explore things like carpooling and human-powered transportation, such as walking and biking. So those programs are in place, and they're an important part of the puzzle to achieving our long-term goals here. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Nick. And then a question here about the next phase, or the future of bus rapid transit or high frequency route service in Rochester. We're still taking, that one is still out a little bit about what's going to be the next phase. Of course, we would love to proceed, continue as was originally planned, bus rapid transit from downtown south along Broadway. But I and the city and RPT have received other comments of interest in other routes, particularly that PTN network that we've looked at so closely today, and how that might play into the next expansion. So in short, I will say that the TDP, or the Transit Development Plan that Bradley just spoke of, will be kind of maybe take a first stab at solving that one. But as always, we're always open to interest in public comment and interest in what that next phase will be. So if you can reach out to me personally, if you have some thoughts on that, I would love to hear those. A question here from Joel about the co-design process, and kind of his question relates to in the co-design process that we have right now for downtown rapid transit. We actually pay individuals to be part of that process, pay an hourly wage, and we also offer additional incentives to help make sure that they can participate through the process. And I'm sure, well, maybe I should say, Bradley, I heard you mention co-design, but I'm sure there will be other payment ways to be involved in the transit development plan in the future.
Yeah, that is accurate. We've asked for multiple forms of community engagement. As I mentioned, surveys, if we can do any sort of in-person type thing, that'd be great. Online open houses. We've really asked for consultants to be creative so that we have a robust public engagement effort beyond just a co-design process. Yeah, I don't know if that gets at the question.
Yeah, and maybe I can just help answer that. Ryan from Community Development and even Brian with ROCOG, we've all been involved in trying to do public engagement on transit, and even more so in transit during the pandemic world. And we're always open to new opportunities and outreach opportunities. So I think, once again, if there's a specific way that you think about that we're not reaching our base, please reach out to us. Now I'll take the time to say thank you and really appreciate everyone's attendance in today's session. I hope today's session highlighted a few different things for you. One note that I did want to say, and unfortunately we don't really have time for this, but I'll try to get this out here and make this way, is that a lot of the documents that we just looked at and just talked through over this hour-long session are available online. If you need a direct resource to all of those, I would direct you to the Rapid Transit page, and that's www.rochestermm.gov/Rapid Transit. And if you click on the menu on the left-hand side, Project Library, all of the documents mentioned today and more are all linked and connected on the Project Library. And also, I believe we have a brief summary of how they even play into the Rapid Transit as well. Besides the website, please reach out via email and phone number. Email rapidtransit@rochestermm.gov. That's rapidtransit@rochestermm.gov. And our phone number 507-328-2025. 507-328-2025. I hope today you saw the connection between land use and transportation, and where the city of Rochester is going, and how trying to find ways for to enable people to get to where they need to, and particularly downtown, is a heavy focus of our community. And that now we've connected that to the comprehensive plan, we really start to really explore and enhance our developed infrastructure and a developed world that's around us, to make sure that everything starts to work together, and we can really start to achieve the multimodal type of community that we're looking for here in Rochester. Once again, thank you for attending today's sessions. I should make a note that, once again, we do have our next sessions already planned and on the website to register. That's May 25th. Once again, noon and 5 o'clock. May 25th, noon and 5 o'clock. That's when we will taking our first real look at the station architecture, or the platforms, how the platforms will look and be laid out. I know many people are very much interested in that. And then in June, we'll take a look at environmentals. Remember to sign up, and for more information, rochestermm.gov/rapid transit, and reach out to the email and phone numbers that are listed on the page. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and have a good day.